In today's episode, we make some mugs, wooden bowls, and plates for use in our tabletop taverns. Let's start things off with making some mugs. So we're going to make the mugs using these. Now these are coffee straws. They're pretty small, they're pretty thin, and they work really great for this application. So I started by taking it outside, clipping it to a binder clip, and then base coating it with a kind of a smoky gray. This gives it a nice base coat, which will make painting it later on a lot easier. So now we're going to cut it at 5mm increments, and that will be the mugs. Alright, so I clipped a few of these off camera, and they are a little pliable, which is okay for our purposes. But they're not really heavy, so we're going to take some of these seed beads and wedge them into what's going to be the bottom of the mug. Alright, so that took a little bit of effort, and it bulged out a little bit on the bottom, but the result is pretty good. I did drop a little bit of super glue into the interior just to kind of hold everything together and make sure it wouldn't come out later. So now we're going to make the mug handle using this. This is an earring that I got from an earring kit out of the Dollar Tree. Now what we're going to do is use a pair of cutters, and we're going to cut the earring loop off to make a mug handle. Now you got to be careful to not have this kind of go flying when you cut it, so I just kind of put my finger over it to kind of make sure it doesn't fly away. Alright, and there we go. That's going to be our nice little mug handle. So now I'm going to use a little bit of gel super glue, since this is going to tack and hold pretty easily and be a lot easier to apply than a liquid super glue. So once I've got the glue applied to the handle, I'm going to just very carefully attach it to the mug and just kind of hold it in position while it kind of cures and sets. Now this doesn't take too long, but it can get a little fiddly if it doesn't tack in the first attempt. But it does work pretty nicely, and there we go, nice little mug. Alright, so to paint this, I'm just going to kind of hold it with a pair of tweezers after the super glue has fully dried, and then give it a full coating with some burnt sienna. This is going to give it a nice kind of clay appearance. So these are, oh, there it goes, flying off into the distance, and was able to retrieve it. And as I was saying, the burnt sienna is going to give it a nice little clay appearance. So these are like some clay mugs or something like that that the tavern would have on hand. Alright, so with that done, let's move on to making some wooden bowls. So using a strip of paper, I cut this to a 9-inch long strip, and it is about 1.5mm wide. I'm just going to very carefully roll the paper into a kind of coil. Now the trick to this is to roll it tight without tearing the paper, and to kind of keep it flat. So I'm rolling it a little bit, pressing it flat, rolling it, pressing it flat. Now, why 9 inches long? Well, that just kind of happened to be the width of the sheet of construction paper I was using. But it does have the side benefit of making a roughly 1/4-inch coil once you're done. Now, as I get to the end here, I do a little bit of Mod Podge on the last bit of the strip and tack it down. So now, using a 10mm bead, I'm going to press the coil over the side of the bead to create a little concaved shape. Alright, off camera I coated the bowl with a little bit of Mod Podge and let that soak in. That way it kind of holds its shape and doesn't fall apart. And now we're going to coat the entirety of the bowl with a layer of neutral gray. This is going to kind of be a base coat of paint so that we can build a couple of layers and kind of make it look like a wooden bowl. Once that's dry, I do a coating of some wild wood from Citadel paints. Now I'm doing this because I like the dark coloration of it. You could also use like a raw umber or some kind of dark brown. But I like this because it gives a nice kind of coloration that really shows through in the final layer. And then we're going to finish it up with a light coating of raw sienna. This will let the browns of the wildwood or the umber to show through and give a nice kind of hand-carved wood appearance. And then once that's dry, our wooden bowls are done. Alright, now let's make some plates. So to make these, I'm using this. This is a box of plastic snaps. These are for like fabrics and things like that for making clothing. These are the smallest ones I could find at Michael's, and I chose these because they've got a lot of little bits in them, but what drew my attention most were, if I could pick it up correctly, there we go, were these. Now these are really, really flat, except for this one little spike on the exact center of them. But we're going to clip that off with a pair of clippers. Be extremely careful if you do this. Make sure that the point is placed directly onto like a table or a cutting mat or something like that. Trust me, this is very hard plastic, and a couple of times I cut these and the tip flew across the room and I was not able to find it. So be very, very careful. You do not want this to fly into you. It will hurt a lot. So once it's cut, we've got a nice little flat piece, which is going to be a very nice little plate, but we do have to cover up this little pattern in the center here. It's kind of a raised edge. I don't know if you can see it all that well, but we are going to need to cover that up before we can use it as a plate. So to do that, we're going to turn to a underused hobby material on my channel, and that is some hot glue. We're going to apply just a little bit of hot glue into the center, and then using the nozzle tip, we're going to spread it around, just kind of get it into all the nooks and crannies of the surface. Alright, now I'm going to set that one aside to dry and take one that I glued up a little bit earlier, and using my fingernail just kind of remove any extra that's kind of spilled out over the sides. Now you can leave this as is, but I want kind of a little bit more of a smooth surface on them. So I'm going to put this back into my little tweezers here. I would actually recommend using pliers for this. Tweezers get a little problematic at times. And then using a lighter, I'm going to just very carefully melt the surface of the glue just to kind of make it a little bit more of a smooth surface. Alright, so I took these outside and base coated them in black just to kind of give it a little bit more of a easy time painting it, and then I'm giving everything a full coating of raw sienna. Now, after I finished filming this, I did change the color scheme. I went with a burnt sienna for kind of a more clay plate look. Doing it this way I think looks a little bit more like wood. Now, that's perfectly fine and it works out well for most applications, but not quite what I was originally going for. Now to kind of darken everything up a little bit, I do apply a little bit of Agrax Earthshade. Now on these here in the video, they are still the raw sienna, so this will look a little bit more like wood. Doing this to the burnt sienna makes it look a lot more like clay. Either way, I think it looks perfectly fine, and once it's all dry, I flip them over, paint the other side, and then we've got a bunch of little wood or clay plates. Alright, so now that that's over, I think it's time for a little narrative. While enjoying some drinks at the tavern after a long quest, the door slams open and 4 soldiers bearing marks of the Legion storm in, demanding that you surrender for crimes against their leader, Leon Silvertongue. Without waiting for your response, they draw their blades and begin to advance. Roll for initiative. Alright, that's going to be it for today. Tune in next week where I show you how I make these little tavern tables that you can also use in your tavern settings. Thank you all for watching. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in the comments section, and we will see everyone next episode.